another episode of the Meadowsweet Money podcast. I'm your host, Mimi Cirbusova, a shame-free money mentor and certified financial education instructor. I'm here to help you fix your finances without losing your humanity. The first day of hurricane season is just around the corner, and I'm planning on baking my annual hurricane cake. It's my one little superstition, I guess you could say. It's also kind of my way of working some protection magic into natural events that I have absolutely no control over. Anyway, I am looking forward to baking something absolutely delicious. Today's episode is on a topic near and dear to my heart: financial literacy. I know there were plenty of times during my first year of debt payoff that I thought, why didn't they teach me this in school? I'm sure you've had the same thought process many times too. But I'm going to talk about the nuances of teaching financial literacy and why I believe we need to go beyond just urging for more education around money in the curriculum. We might need to ask some serious questions to ensure that financial education is not only available, but also effective. And later in the episode, I'm going to help you figure out if it's time to break up with your toxic bank. So stay tuned for the Back to Basics segment. And I'm going to be doing some patron shoutouts as well as giving you all the juicy details on what's coming up during the In Case You Missed It segment. So don't skip over that part because I have some really good stuff happening this summer. All right, I think it's time we get into the nitty-gritty of our main topic and ask, what if we taught about money in schools? You may or may not know this about me, but my degree is actually in elementary education. You see, there was a time in my life when I wanted nothing more than to be an art teacher, which I did get the chance to do for a few months of my life, but that's a whole different story for another day. Anyway, when I had the realization that I wanted to be an art teacher, I was working for a nonprofit organization that sent me all over the school district teaching about personal safety. And that gave me a lot of time talking with actual teachers, classroom teachers. And what they told me over and over was that principals really cared more than anything that you could manage and control a classroom. The subject area was kind of secondary to that. So the long story short, I went after that role and I tried to pursue it, but I realized pretty quickly after graduation that there wasn't going to be a permanent art education position in the district for at least 5 years after I graduated, and my teaching certificate would have been expired by that point, so I just kind of ended up back in nonprofit. The whole experience, though, with getting my degree and trying to get into the field of teaching ended up meaning I could make more money anyway, so I kind of take that part as a win, and I don't regret going after a degree in education. Because teaching is who I am as a person, and I have a lot of experience and training in how people learn. The skills of teaching are always something I'm practicing and refining, so in that way, I have a rather unique perspective on financial literacy education. It's part of why I went after a certification in becoming a certified financial education instructor, because I wanted specifically to understand how people learn about financial literacy. So all of that leads me to this topic of whether we should be teaching personal finance in schools. And of course, my short answer is yes. But the longer answer is yes and. Late last year, my friend Adrienne Lucas, who runs the incredible Atomic Holiday Bazaar event in Sarasota, Florida, sent me this New York Times article. And it was detailing how more and more states are requiring financial literacy courses in high schools, but most of those programs really weren't up to snuff. The report that this article referred to, which I'll leave a link to in the show notes, does say that many states are adopting personal finance classes as approved by their state legislatures. Sadly, a lot of these programs are not going to be in place until 2028. And I'm going to be very honest with you, my friend. As much as I would love to see all these states have a robust personal finance and economics education program required for every single student, I do have some things that make me a little wary. You see, I also understand the reality. A lot of these kinds of classes are simply a single semester elective course, and by high school, kids already have a lot of ideas about how money works, what it is, and how their families interact with it. A personal pet peeve of mine is the quote, $1 million project lesson plans I see in the elementary school level. There's a ton of these lesson plans in the Teachers Pay Teachers website and on Pinterest and a lot of other places, and they're usually designed to help kids grasp how big of a number 1 million really is. The whole lesson plan is that students must pretend that they have $1 million, often portrayed as them receiving as an inheritance, and that they need to spend it all. Some of the lessons require students to do a presentation about how they'd spend their money, and some even explain that they'd need to spend it in certain ways. Often these lessons are billed as a way to teach kids about budgeting. But what are we really teaching them? If you suddenly have $1 million landing in your lap, my goodness, I sure hope that you won't immediately jump to spending it all. I would hope that you would save some of it, invest some of it, and thoughtfully enjoy some of it over time. So my first pet peeve of this lesson plan is that it perpetuates the capitalist standard of spending as the priority. Secondly, I take issue with the idea of students not being given a clear understanding of the long-term and recurring costs of their purchases. This lesson doesn't take into account all the cars, houses, pets, and toys that they collage together on their poster boards of purchases. Those are not a one-and-done deal. Pets need vet visits. Homes have maintenance, insurance, and property taxes, and cars also have maintenance and insurance. The premise of this lesson plan is a little precarious too. Like, how many students realistically are going to inherit cash of $100 million or more? What message does that really send to students in our communities that go to bed hungry every night? Or whose parents are struggling to pay the light bill? I think while this lesson plan is very well intentioned, I don't know if this is the best quote unquote real world example to use for these learning standards. Because it sure seems to me that it teaches a whole lot of unintentional messages about what money is for and how we earn it or not, and what we do with it when it's in our bank accounts. I have a lot more I could say on that specific topic, but I ultimately want to share my thoughts on financial literacy in schools in general. The person at the front of the room matters. It matters a whole lot. It's one thing to have a requirement of personal finance education, but it's a whole other to know that the teacher is someone who is well-versed and trained in that subject area. I took an elective in high school that was an economics class, and I honestly could not tell you what I even learned. There was nothing in that class that was relatable to me or my life. Did we even talk about personal finance? I have no idea. I don't really remember much about it, but I do remember being told to sit in front of a computer and to play some kind of like investing simulator game. But we weren't given instructions on how it worked or why or what should we do. And I just remember wanting to get the heck away from all the kids, these rich kids that I was in class with, whose parents were telling them to all buy Halliburton stock. Halliburton, by the way, is one of the largest oil companies in the world and is one of the largest fracking operations. And I remember thinking in high school, if getting rich means I got to support this kind of thing, count me out. But on the flip side, I took a sociology class in college and the professor was incredible. I remember everything about that class, including a lesson that she called Monopoly My Way. We were split up into groups and we had to play this board game of Monopoly, but with a very different set of rules. I've managed to find a lesson plan that was pretty close to what my professor used, and I'm going to link that up in the show notes for you if you're curious. And it was obvious that it was the first time many of the students in that class had experienced any kind of economic inequality. Never mind that it was only through a game, but many of them found themselves unable to continue playing rather quickly because of the way the rules were set up. The person teaching about personal finance has to be captivating and knowledgeable, both skilled in the art of education, but also enthusiastic about the topic too. And this is to also say that the curriculum very much matters. You couldn't pay me to pay attention in high school algebra, so it's unlikely that a class that talks about retirement plans and the nuances of tax law, in high school, that wouldn't have mattered to me either, honestly. When I was in high school, I wanted to figure out how to buy a car so I could get to my part-time job at Target and go on dates with my boyfriend, who is now my husband. So with all of that said, I would hope the curriculum being used is from an unbiased source. I'm very wary of the idea that school districts would purchase or could purchase a boxed curriculum that is packaged by some big giant national bank or investment firm or even a long-standing talking head that has made their career out of telling people that the only time they should go into a restaurant if they're in debt is to be working there. Yeah, I don't want that for my children. I can tell you that much for sure. I think curriculum should be relatable to students, and I certainly wouldn't want it to be a subtle advertisement. I mean, we wouldn't want our kids learning about nutrition from a sugary cereal brand that slaps their branded characters all over the workbooks and the actual materials, right? The other thing is that one class in high school isn't enough. We know this. And as someone familiar with the realities of public education, more often than not, the kids that would be able to access these kinds of educational opportunities are not likely the ones that need it most. So all of this is to say that, yes, I wholeheartedly support financial literacy in schools. I do. And I want to see it done right. Yes, I love the idea of states requiring personal finance education for all students, and I know that what students learn in the other 11 and a half years of their educational experience is important too. Yes, I want financial literacy for everyone, and I know what we learn in the classroom is only a fraction of what we learn in our lifetimes. What I do know for sure is that talking about money is a gift to everyone around you, as I mentioned in the last episode. If you have a young person in your life, consider what you say to them about money, both directly and indirectly. What message do you ultimately want to communicate? Is it one of fear and anxiety or one of calm and composure? Is your goal for them to only learn how to spend, or do you want them to also know how to save, invest, and be intentional with where their money is going and flowing? How are you relating to them on their level with their interests and current life situation? With all of that, I hope I gave you something to chew on. These are just my perspectives, of course, and I still do believe that we absolutely must do a better job of preparing students to grab hold of their financial health with the best information that we can give them, knowing that every single one of them will be faced with the challenges of navigating money on their own someday. But I know the way we teach this matters too. Okay, that was heavy enough, and I will get off my soapbox. So let's lighten it up with some In Case You Missed It. While I was writing this episode, I took a little break to shuffle my tarot cards. There's something about shuffling a deck that's so soothing and centering. Pretty quickly, the Sun card jumped out, and I think that card is perfect for what I am sharing with you today. I want you to feel better about your finances, and if you are ready to shine a positive light on where your money is going and flowing, I have the perfect thing for you. Registration for my signature introductory workshop, Climbing the Money Mountain, is now open. So join me on Zoom on June 13th for a free 75-minute live workshop where I'm going to teach you the 5 basic fundamental levels to becoming confident and effective in managing money. I created this workshop in order to help you understand my shame-free framework for financial literacy and help you clarify your own understanding of what it takes to become confident and effective. There's no weird restrictive budgets, no finance bro BS. This is about figuring out where you are with your finances and how to get where you want to be without the silly distractions and mindless fluff. And certainly, absolutely no shame. The easiest way to sign up is by going to meadowsweetmoney.com/events or use the link in the show notes. Again, this workshop is free, and even if you can't make it live, anyone who registers will get access to the recording for 2 weeks. I also want to thank my newest patrons, and really all of my patrons, because without my Patreon supporters, I could not air this podcast and keep it ad-free. And it's so important to me, it truly is. I would be absolutely heartbroken if I had ads on this podcast that went against what I believed in. And my paid Patreon supporters are the ones that sponsor this podcast. So thank you to all of you. I can't tell you how much it means to me. Did you know that you can become one of my patrons for as little as $3 a month? That's the same price as a bottle of the cheapest nail polish you can get at Target. So, full transparency, so you know, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, my goal is to get to enough patrons that I can start offering annual Patreon memberships, because once I can do that, I can offer a discounted rate, take a little bit off, save you a little bit of money. But for me to get to that point, I need to be earning $200 a month on the Patreon app, and I have to do that for 3 months straight. So if you've been sitting on the fence, if you've been kind of thinking about it for a while, I really encourage you to join. There's a ton of benefits for doing so, including access to my new Struggle Meals workshop. So to sign up, go to patreon.com/meadowsweetmoney, or again, follow the link in the show notes. If you want more personalized support, though, my calendar is open for the summer for one-on-one mentoring sessions. And when you work with me one-on-one, we collaborate to create a whole new pathway forward for you. We address your unique needs and challenges and goals. So if you're interested in working with me this summer, head on over to meadowsweetmoney.com and click on the button that says Work With Me. And just so you know, I do offer free consultations because I want to make sure that we're a good fit. I don't do salesy, I don't do a high pressure anything ever. It's literally me just finding out what it is you're looking for and seeing if I'm the right person for your journey. And if not, I do my best to refer you to other professionals that can help. So again, if you're interested in fixing your finances without losing your humanity or the joy in life, let's talk about one-on-one mentoring. Okay, that's all of my announcements for now, but I want to get back to basics. And something I do want to note before we jump into that is you might notice some changes to the way that this particular podcast sounds. There are some things happening, and I'm having to kind of learn some new software, so I hope you'll hang tight with me as we get this new podcast recording process figured out. All right, that's all I got to say about that, so let's get back to basics. For the final segment of today's podcast, I want to pose the question, is it time for you to break up with your toxic bank? It's no secret that some of the biggest players in the financial industry are doing some shady stuff. After all, many names you and I know have faced fines for being out of industry compliance, for violations of federal law, and even committing fraud. Some really big names out there are repeat offenders and have settled for billions of dollars each time. And I know the idea of switching banks, even when you hate yours, sounds like such a drag. But I want to help you figure out if it's time to do so and how to navigate that process so it's not too big of a deal. First off, let's talk about why you might want to switch. For the most part, I think this is kind of a gut thing. If you're asking yourself the question, it's probably time to at least look into it. You might want to switch if you're going through a life transition, such as moving to a new area or opening a joint account with your spouse. But it could be that you're just over it with your bank's shenanigans. If they have high fees, poor customer service, or the kinds of services they offer just aren't broad enough for your needs, it might be time to take a look at what else is out there. Again, only you can really decide if it's the right time, but I would recommend outlining a plan of action and committing to the tasks of transitioning banks. I've switched banks a couple of times, and I am not going to downplay that it does take a tiny bit of work on your part. So what should you do if you decide it's time to break up with your toxic bank? First, you need to do your research. You might want to consider an online-only bank or a credit union. Of course, you want to make sure that they're FDIC or NCUA insured, and they should have this at the bottom of their website. It should be very obvious. But you might also need to ask yourself if you need to do things like access an ATM nearby, or if you travel frequently, are there ATMs available? I'll leave a link in the show notes, but I particularly like the website Mighty Deposits for researching how financial institutions are aligned with your values. Look for banks that offer services that you need and have the kinds of investing in community or the priorities that they have, the values that they have. I am going to give you a caveat here, though. I want you to be careful not to get so in the weeds of researching a new bank that you never actually take action. Now, once you've decided on a new place to stash your cash, then it's time to open a new account. You can do this online, most likely, but you're probably going to need your social security number and a driver's license number. You may want to wait until you receive any new debit or credit cards in the mail before you take the next steps. So once you open the account, you're going to then need to fund the account or put money into this. And the way that you can do this is by switching your direct deposit information at work or transferring money from your old account into the new one. You also then want to make sure that you're updating any automatic payments you have, such as utility bills, rent, what have you. You also want to update any linked online accounts such as Venmo or PayPal. And I wouldn't rush to empty or close the old account right away. You just want to make sure that all your checks are clearing into the new account and automatic payments are working for at least a full month once you think you've switched everything over. And then once you are sure that everything is working and your paychecks are being deposited correctly and auto payments are running smoothly, then you can go ahead and close the old account. So the way that you do that is by contacting the bank by phone, email, or in person. And some banks may actually be able to close your account using their chat feature on their website if they have it. The bank will most likely cut you a check for any remaining balance, or again, you can link your old account to your new account and transfer electronically. Now listen, while I know it can be an inconvenience to change financial institutions, it's often worth it in the end. Because you deserve to feel good about your finances, and if your bank makes you grumpy, it's one more reason that you're going to put off taking care of all the other financial self-care stuff. That's it for today, my friend. As always, I want you to know that you're doing great, and I'm so, so proud of you. Thank you for listening to the Meadowsweet Money podcast, a production of Meadowsweet Money LLC. This podcast is sponsored by my supporters on Patreon. For more details or to become a patron, please visit patreon.com/meadowsweetmoney. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast player. Even better, share this episode with a friend or a coworker. And be sure to hit that follow button so you never miss a single episode. The information and content provided in this podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only. It should not be considered legal or financial advice. Please consult with an attorney or other professional to determine what may be best for your individual needs. Remember, the point of this podcast is not money. Money is the vehicle for you to live your best life, because you deserve it. For more shame-free personal finance content, visit meadowsweetmoney.com. Thanks for listening.